Hello, everybody. I'm Raina from Garden District Bookshop, and this is Virtual Happy Hour. Tonight, I am talking with Ari Herstand. He is the author of How to Make It in the New Music Business, which came out in 2016 with a second edition in 2019, and it is the book that every musician needs to read. He is also a musician himself and had a new song drop today, which we are going to talk about in just a few minutes. So I'm going to click this button and welcome Ari to Virtual Happy Hour.
Yeah, this is so cool. I feel like we're actually in the bookshop, which I miss so dearly and desperately. But this is the kind of the next best thing. So thanks for having me. This is fun.
Yeah, I mean, this is as close as we're going to get for a little while.
Totally. No, it's great. Cool.
Well, how are you doing out there? You are out in California, right?
Yeah, I'm in LA. And you know, it's up and down here. They just loosened our restrictions here. We were on pretty heavy lockdown for the last month, I think like 2 months or so. But you know, it's beautiful, it's sunny. It's fine. It's like I'm missing live music so desperately these days. And so it's been like I was just thinking about it. It's coming up on a year since I played a live show, which is pretty nuts to think about, considering like I don't think I'd gone maybe 3 months in like 17 years, and now I've gone almost a year since playing a show, which is like pretty that like is just like, you know, turns my world upside down a little bit. But yeah.
I mean, that's tough. I mean, it's tough no matter what you're doing, but being on stage and that feeling of just the people and being in that room, that's hard to recreate. That's hard to recreate.
Yeah. So, you know, we're trying all the things out and finding community and all the weird places on the internet, I guess. And you know, making friends with our local juice shop owners and just saying hey to them, you know. So
right. That's what you're drinking, right? I have my iced coffee. I've put a little like vanilla liqueur in my iced coffee tonight. What you got there?
I have a juice. It's kale and turmeric and carrots and ginger and cayenne. It's spicy. It's very, very tasty. It's only 3 o'clock here. Maybe I'll infuse it in a little bit right after our conversation. I'll go infuse with something. You've inspired me now. Yeah.
So one thing that I've really loved as a viewer with COVID actually is getting to see inside some of my favorite musicians like lives a little more than you normally do. Because I've actually found they're more accessible in a lot of ways, because you're turning your camera on just like I am. You're going to play me a song, and that's great. But I can see your piano, and I can see your guitars, and I can see your records on the back there. And I go, oh, look at that. I've seen into Ari's room. What is happening? And I can type and I say, oh, can you play this song? You know, and you're like, oh, yeah. I'll totally do that. Where if I was in a club, I'd be back there. No, Ari's not paying attention to me.
Right. Oh, well, that's nice to hear that as a music fan that you've enjoyed this time period, because I think as like so many of us, we're not really getting the feedback in real time. We don't feel that energy like you do in a club, and so you can kind of tell when you're playing something in a club like how it's going, just by sensing the energy of the room. But typically, when we're playing for a chat box, basically, it's kind of hard to tell if they're like digging it or if they're just like, you know, on the John watching or something like that. And be like, which, you know, no problems with that, I guess, either.
Speaking of that, anybody who is watching, please feel free to type in the comments. If you have any comments, any questions, anything, just say hi. Tell us where you're watching from. We'd love to see that. Obviously, we're talking about that. And we'd love to answer any questions that you've got, books, music, whatever. Throw it at us. So have you been doing a lot of, I don't know, virtual concerts or something like that?
I've done a few. I don't particularly. They're challenging. Well, so right when the pandemic hit, and all live venues shut down. This was like end of March. a couple friends and I, we launched the Uncanceled Music Festival. And we basically got a bunch of venues from all over the world, and to kind of come together, book shows simultaneously. Oh, hey, Joel. Hey, Annabelle. Hey, Hope. Thanks, guys. What's up? And we put together a bunch of live stream shows right at the end of March, and we put these together to raise money for the artists and the venues. I mean, these were like ticketed concerts that you could tip the artists, and so, it was cool, and we kind of, I think, helped kind of encourage artists and venues and music fans especially to kind of use a live streaming platform a little bit to support their favorite artists and venues. We didn't realize at the time that this was going to be lasting over a year. We thought like, oh, this will get them through the next month when we can't play shows. But it was fine. It was cool, and very happy to do that. And that was a lot of fun. I played a couple shows around then, live stream stuff, and it's tough. I mean, it's like, any musician, it's like playing for a chat box is not the same as being in the club. So I cannot wait to get back to the club. I'm planning a drive-in concert for early this summer, so we'll be doing that fairly soon. And so that's like what I'm working on getting together right now.
That would be awesome. I haven't been to one of those yet. They've done a few around here, and I've been to a couple like backyard things that they've done that are really like the number. They don't let very many people in, and it's very like separated out and everything. I've done a couple of those, but I haven't done any of the drive-in ones here. They've had a couple, but they're really large scale, and it's like I feel it's not a drop-in situation.
Yeah, the backyard ones, I did play one backyard concert, and that was a lot of fun. And that was, even though there were only like 20 some people, very spaced far apart in their little pods. That was actually really nice. I really enjoyed doing that. Honestly, just being able to play music for just even like a smattering of people who are engaged is just like, well, I'll take anything right now.
Right?
Yeah.
It's like sometimes you can see the piano behind me, and my husband plays much better than I do, but we'll open the front door, and where we live in the city, there's people walking around a bit. Just sort of open the front door and he'll play the piano, and it kind of does give you, even when people walk by, they kind of acknowledge that you exist.
Right.
Right?
That is something I've noticed, like walking around the neighborhood, you're hearing a lot more music coming from the windows than you did before. But yeah.
Yes, that's fun.
Okay, so how is I have to ask you, because New Orleans is my favorite city in the world, and I try to get there about once a year. I haven't been there obviously since this whole thing. How is it going there? I'm assuming there really isn't much music happening, or what's going on? Is there?
Yeah, so musically, most venues are shut for indoor music. Okay. I think we're shut down for indoor music again. We had a little window around Christmas where you could have, but it was certain it had to be only like piano and guitar. You couldn't no horns, no blow. Yeah, things like that. There's weird rules like that.
Sure.
Necessary, but it was specific instruments and such. And then outdoors, okay, with the social distancing, but I think we're back down to pretty much nothing at this point. And the mayor actually just made an announcement today. We are shutting the city down for Mardi Gras. Pretty much, like all bars, no alcohol. So every bar is completely 100% shut. Restaurants can't serve alcohol. No to go, no packaged alcohol in the French Quarter, starting the 12th, I believe, through the end of Mardi Gras Day. It was just a situation where like locals were pretty much staying home, for the most part, but we still had tourists coming in, and they're on Bourbon Street, and they're drinking and they're walking around, and then that's like this gray area where I'm having a drink, so I don't have to wear my mask. And so we couldn't control it. Yeah, I mean, it's just too hard to control. So that was just announced today. So that's going to be a very interesting situation. But I know a lot of musicians that are, you're doing what they can, doing porch concerts. There have been these porch concerts. So people who do have porches and things are playing
Nice.
Some of them like weekly shows, like, every Thursday. Anise St. John is a friend of mine, and she is doing, I think it's every Thursday. It's every week on her porch.
Fun.
Her and her piano player is playing his keyboard on her front porch.
Cool.
Nice. Yeah, so little things like that.
Mm-hmm. Nice.
But it's
well, I can't wait to get back, and hopefully by the fall, things will be more or less back to normal, and I will be there marching down Frenchman Street with everyone else. So
exactly. Yes.
Yeah.
I'm
cool.
I very much looking forward to that. Because I didn't know how much I missed going out until you can't do it, obviously. It's like the age-old saying, you don't know what you've got till it's gone. And anytime you feel like, I could go out this Saturday if I want, whatever, and then all of a sudden you can't, you're like, I would go anywhere. I would listen to anybody. I would just go.
I know.
This is crap, but I'm with a friend and I have a drink. Okay, let's go.
Yeah, right. Totally. I've been watching Your Honor, the Showtime show recently, which takes place in New Orleans, and it's just like, it's making me miss it even so much more as just spotting the thing. They just had a lunch or it was dinner at what's the spot, the really fancy restaurant right around the corner from you guys, Commander's Palace. They just had a dinner at Commander's Palace, and I was like, it's right there. It's the Garden District right by. Yeah, it's so great. So cool. Well, I will be back very soon.
Okay, so you had a song come out today.
Yes, I did.
I've listened to it. I liked it. It was pretty good.
Thank you.
How was it like making a whole album during the pandemic?
Yeah. So that was a very challenging, interesting process. So this song that came out today, it's called Like Home. So I wrote most of these songs before the pandemic hit. I kind of had spent the previous year writing just nonstop, and then when we decided to record this, every record I've done up until this point has been with a band in studio, fairly live. We do overdubs of vocals and maybe horns or something after the fact, but for the most part, it was the energy of the musicians in the studio kind of creating music together. Obviously, we couldn't really do that with this, so this was a very different process. Created the majority of the record through Zoom like this with my producer who lives 15 minutes down the road, and through the wonders of modern technology, like with our own gear, he was like on the drum kit because he has a studio. He'd be on the kit, and I would be listening to the session, watching him through my computer screen in real time, listening to the entire session down. There's technology that does that. And I could literally say, like, go to the ride. And he'd be like, oh, okay. And then he'd like in real time would just take it.
Awesome.
And so like we were able to make the whole record this way. And I'd pull like guitars. And so it was actually surprisingly a lot better than I was expecting the recording process to go. And we were able to connect. I'm just, very fortunate that we're in 2020, 2021 during this time period where we have the technology to be able to do stuff like that. And so it was definitely an interesting process, but I'm really proud of what we created. And, we used a good friend of mine who's a bassist. He lives in Nashville. So we had a session with him and he played bass from Nashville. We had a couple string players and they're in LA, but we kind of sent them the tracks and they recorded it at home and sent them over to us. So we kind of patched it together, but I think it feels fairly organic, like we're together and so, we did what we could to kind of create this record separate, but make it feel cohesive. And that's, we'll see.
That's so awesome. Like technology is amazing. Just the fact that you're able to really be doing it in like real time. I mean, people have made albums before where they laid down a track and then sent it and then laid down a track and then sent it, and you're having to really truly piece it together that way. But now we're at a point where you can actually say like, no, tweak that and it happens and you can
in
hear
real
it.
time.
Right.
Yeah,
It's
which
like
is
that's,
crazy.
I think maybe even just a few years ago, we wouldn't have been able to have it that.
No, for sure. I
Yeah.
mean, with the, with the, not just the bandwidth or the Wi-Fi speeds or all of that, but just how like computers can handle, because it's just a lot of work for the processing power to do all that. And even just the technology didn't exist. Like, we're using programs that were created within the last 2 years. And since the pandemic, there's been a lot more programs that have come out or been popularized, or even just the programs that have gotten a lot better. I mean, we've all seen what's happened with Zoom in the last year, and just how that, like, this seems to be always a new update happening there. But with every side of it, the live streaming capabilities for like we were talking about concerts and that kind of stuff. But with this was like, even for recording technology, that has really sped up the kind of development process this last year. So yeah, it was cool. I mean, I was a little wary going into the process that it was going to feel like I was making a record, and like it was something that I would have the inspiration or the passion or kind of that energy that you feel when you're making a record, or the magic. There's always some magic that happens when you make a record, and I was worried that we weren't going to have that magic, but it was happening. Oddly enough, through the screen and through the heads, it's just like immersing yourself. And I would put headphones on and make sure that we were really immersed and just like, really just tapping into the music. And so it worked. And I'm really happy with what we created. So I'm very, very happy to release the first single today. So yeah.
That's good. You're able to harness, that magic, even though it's a totally different process.
Yeah.
And I think a lot of the programs and stuff, it's out of necessity. I mean, all of a sudden they were allowed to before the pandemic hit. You're like, oh, well, we'll come out with an update in 3 months. No big deal. We'll work on it. And now all of a sudden, like, there's 1 million people using this right this second. You must make this better. This little bitty problem that only like 10 people had just a month ago, now like everyone has it because everyone's using it. It makes a big difference in things like that, for sure.
Yeah.
Excuse me. And I hope it's okay. So here's a thing that I hope with book tours, and I kind of hope it with music tours too, but we'll see. So with book tours, typically, you have a few cities and you travel around and you sign your book and whatever, and then you go home. Well, now with the virtual book tours, people that aren't in New Orleans can see you. You come to New Orleans, but somebody who's an hour and a half away and that's just too far of a drive for them can still come to your book event, your Zoom event, come to a virtual happy hour. And we've seen that. We've seen that type of thing. And I'm wondering if after the pandemic, they will tweak book tours a little bit to maybe include a virtual event at the end, possibly, where you still go out on the road. You still sign books, kiss babies, whatever it is you do.
Right.
And but at the end, you maybe have this virtual event that you could partner with a bookstore who again isn't in a big city, who doesn't normally get a lot of authors coming through, and they can push it out to everybody else who couldn't possibly get there.
I love that, because then how you can personalize it for the bookstore and for the people who are tuning in is that what you can do is everyone who's tuned in, and let's say it's like a Zoom kind of thing where then at the end of it, you unmute them and you go down one by one, people buy the book right on the spot, and you're like, okay, hey, Raina, how's it going? Cool. I have your book here. Would you like me to sign it? All right, great. Raina, who would you like?
Oh no, you're muted. Hold on, you went.
I figured out.
Sorry. Okay.
And I think it's like my earbuds that keeps like saying no, let's mute him. And then like I would sign the book for whoever's on the other thing, and then Garden District could wrap it up and ship it out to them. And so it's like they get the signed thing. We have the interaction like we'd normally do at a book signing, and you're supporting the local bookstore. So I think it could go both ways. It would be fun. When I did my book tour in 2017 for the first edition, when I came to you guys and I did a full book tour around the country, I did actually live stream all the stops that I made, but it was a little different. It wasn't necessarily like that because that technology wasn't there yet.
Right.
but I was just on Facebook Live kind of doing the thing. But it was cool because people were tuning in. I usually did discussions, I would bring in musicians or something like that, like at the one at Garden. You guys, I did brought in a couple of musician friends and we had a conversation, and then they played in the foyer area there. And so, yeah, I think it could be cool, and I'm excited to see what book tours will look like for when I release the 3rd edition of the book. I might do another tour, and then we could do that. Yeah.
Yeah, and I bet after the pandemic and all the things you've had to do and learn and tweak and whatever, you could do a 3rd edition.
Oh yeah, I'm taking notes every day. I have a running note sheet of what I want to include in the 3rd edition, and normally, so for people that don't know, like I wrote the book in New Orleans. So I wrote the 1st edition in New Orleans. I spent a month. Actually, my cousins live in the Garden District, and so I stayed with my cousins. I walked down the street to District Donuts, and I wrote in District Donuts every day, right on Magazine there. And my cousins live on Jackson, and so I literally would sit in District Donuts for 10 hours every day and just write. And I got to know everybody. And so I wrote the whole book. I spent a month there writing. Then I would go out every night, see music on Frenchman. And that was my routine. And so for the 2nd edition, when I kind of got greenlit to do that, I went back to New Orleans, stayed with my cousins, and went back to District Donuts 3 years later. And there were still people who were working there like, oh my gosh, Ari, you're back. And they had my book displayed right on the counter, which is cool. And then so I'm planning to do it every 3 years. So every time I do an update to the book, I'm going to come back to New Orleans. I'm going to go back to District Donuts. Hopefully they'll still be in the same spot, and then write the next edition. And so maybe this fall, but because things have been changing so rapidly, and nothing I don't think will be really settled in how the industry is going to be after, I might wait a little bit longer, but I will definitely be back to write the 3rd edition then, back in New Orleans.
I love this creative cycle you have. You go, you listen to the music, fill back up, take a nap, go to sleep, get up in the morning, go to District Donuts, you got coffee, you got your donuts, go.
That's right.
All right.
That's right. Yeah. Every morning I would actually run the streetcar tracks, because it's they were right. I had this routine where I would wake up every morning, I'd go run the streetcar tracks, I'd run a few miles, then I'd come back, shower, walk to District Donuts, get my breakfast and coffee, sit down, write for 10 hours, go out to Frenchman Street. And that was the routine every day.
That's awesome.
Yeah.
Your earbuds are no, I'm done. They're just done. Quit. Okay, so I discovered something else when I was poking around your website today.
Yeah.
And everyone needs to call this phone number. Grassroots District. This is brilliant. Brilliant. I love the music, but beside from that, this marketing idea is brilliant. And I'm gonna post the link to that website. But
cool.
There's a phone number here, and I encourage everyone later, pull out your cell phone, call it. It's great.
Thank you.
It's great.
Yeah. So Grassroots District is my funk band. It's my 1973 inspired funk band. And we're actually, the DriveIn concert that I mentioned earlier, we're building a 1973 drive-in experience around this funk project. And so it's what we're developing now, it's going to be kind of an immersive drive-in experience, like you're showing up to a concert in 1973 in the tailgating parking lot experience. We're doing this in LA. And so people have a parking spot, and then they'll park, and then they'll have a space right next to them so they can get out and dance and everything. They'll listen to music. They'll have it through the FM transmitter, but we'll also have some speakers going. So everything around this project is based in 1973.
That's awesome. Yeah.
Yeah, that's what's right. So I'm so happy that you're able to check out Grassroots District. But yeah, call that number, listen to some of the music, and get a little story.
And I had no idea that was connected to to the concert coming up this summer.
Yeah.
But that's also a brilliant idea. Not only, I mean, the whole concept, but okay, here's what I imagine, right? The part that is really getting me is everyone's radios tuned in. So you of course, you have the loud music coming from toward the stage. But if you're back here, what you're hearing is that, but also it coming from like all around you. If everybody turns their radios on and they turn them up and you're just kind of like grooving along to it.
Yeah.
Oh, that's going to be good. That's going to be good.
I went to one drive-in concert and surprisingly it works really well. There's not much delay because it's radio. It's on the same line. So it's almost like you're hearing the speakers, but they all work perfectly. So yeah, it'll be fun. It'll be, we're going to start it in LA this summer and then we'll just kind of take it from there. Yeah.
I will say too, like the concerts that have occurred during COVID have been like experience concerts. If that makes sense. You know what I mean? Sometimes you just go into a bar and you hear a song and, you know, and that's what it is. But occasionally there'll be these like moments when you're just listening to music and you can't, I don't know that you can necessarily recreate it all the time. You know, it's just sort of these moments. And I feel like a lot of these concerts that have happened during COVID have had to have been that way because you have to create this thing and to keep it safe and everything. And I kind of envy like the people that have had to been able to experience like multiple ones of those because you have this drive-in that you're talking about. Oh my gosh, who did the Bubble concert? Was it the Flaming Lips?
The Flaming Lips did the Bubble one.
The Bubble one recently. Like I'm like,
so
how is
crazy.
that gonna work? Like it's awesome.
So smart. Right. Yeah. Because he would always bring out the bubble at all of his shows, and he would take it over the crowd, body surf basically in the bubble, and then everyone got their own bubble for their concert, which was pretty crazy, and that was brilliant. So yeah, everyone, you know, musicians are creative people, and we're figuring out ways to kind of make this experience and enhance it a little bit more than just through the screen these days. So yeah.
So you've done a couple, you've done a couple of those.
Yeah. The drive-in, this is going to be the first drive-in that I'm performing in. I've been to a couple drive-in concerts so far and they've been great. And that is part of what it kind of inspired this idea. But we've been working on Buriers District for a few years. So we have some music out, but the whole vision and concept of this project from the beginning, from when I created this, was that this would be a band from 1973 performing in 1973, and everybody in the club is so you walk through the front doors and it's like a portal to 1973, and everybody knows that, and they come dressed up and they come ready to enter 1973. And so this has been this concept that we were supposed to launch last summer in a club. We had it all together, it's almost like where theater meets music. And so we teamed up with an immersive theater company, and we worked with playwrights, and we worked with other actors and producers, and this music venue that we had in town that signed on to this. And we are going to create this whole immersive experience in the club. And that was supposed to happen last summer. So now we're kind of reimagining it for the drive-in, and then we'll move it into the club when music's back in the clubs. Yeah, that'll be fun. Okay.
Well, you have to bring it to New Orleans.
Yeah. That'd be great.
Absolutely have to, because this sounds amazing. I'm super into music and I'm a total theater nerd. So combining those two things, and fun fact, my parents were in a band in the 60s and 70s. So like I get to go, like I get to move into that space. Like I was walking into a club they might play in. That would be awesome. I'm so excited.
Nice. Yeah. I can't wait. I mean, I came up with this concept after my first writing trip in New Orleans, because it was, you know, I've been a singer-songwriter my whole career, mostly acoustic singer-songwriter stuff. But I was, when I would run the streetcar tracks every morning, I was actually I just happened to be listening to this 1970s funk soul playlist that was just what I was running to every morning. And then of course at night, all the music that I'm seeing on Frenchman Street our funk bands and brass bands and all that stuff. So that was what was in me. And I kind of came out of that month-long trip. I'm like, oh my gosh, like I got to start a funk band. Like I gotta make funk music. And so that was the impetus, this whole trip, coming like from that first writing trip, writing the book in New Orleans, doing all that. I came back, got the band together, wrote the record, wrote the songs, started releasing some of the music, got this immersive theatrical concert experience together, and then now it's finally going to come to life this summer in the form of a drive-in.
Well, I'm there. I'm so
cool.
There for this. I'm definitely in. Okay, cool. So let me ask you. You are like DIY. You're the DIY guy. Mm-hmm. What is DIY to you? Like,
sure. Yeah. So DIY stands for do it yourself. And yes, I'm the DIY. Forbes called me the poster child of DIY music, which I was very humbled and flattered. But it's not accurate in the sense that like I've done everything myself. There is no like truly do it yourself. So like I appreciate, and I will like wear that and encourage and try to inspire other musicians to do as much as they can without relying on the powers that be to give them permission to do it. And I think really what it comes down to is just finding your passion, what really inspires you, and following that and figuring out a way to turn that into a career. And yes, you're going to have to do it in a somewhat non-traditional way. So I think, what DIY, at least in music, has become is that this is this new frontier in the internet era where we don't have to be given permission from the powers that be, the labels, the whomever, to say, yes, you're worthy. Yes, you can have a career, or no, you're not. And no, you can't, which is what happened before. Now, anyone can really do it themselves to a point, but enlisting help and support from maybe a non-traditional team, friends, family, like I talk about in the book, what the new team is. And so traditionally, all the old music business books, they had a very strict team. What your team was, you had a record label, you had a lawyer, you had a manager, you had a booking agent, you had a publisher and a publicist. That was the team. And like nobody deviated from that team. It's like, yeah, but like that's not necessarily the reality for most people these days. And most people don't start with that team. Most people start with like their best friend who's just like, oh yeah, sure, I'll help rally people up to get to your concert. Like, and they're a team member. They're like almost more important than what a label can do early on. And so it's like, you need those people, those supporters. And so like a team can be anyone from, I've had a lot of support from friends who are like graphic designers or video editors or web developers or all of that stuff. I mean, the team now comes in so many different forms, not to mention like the producer and the engineers and the people that are helping you create the music and all that. But for the most part, like these days, it's kind of for musicians needing to understand what needs to happen, and then figuring out how they can make it happen. And if their strengths don't allow them necessarily to do it themselves, then enlisting someone else and finding people that can help them make it happen. So like I always talk about, and like what I talk about early on in the book, is the most important thing any musician can do at any stage of their career, but especially early on, is identify goals and set goals, set 6-month goals, 1-year goals, 5-year goals, and really like very specific goals. Like, what are you actually looking to do? Not just, I want to have a successful music career, but like give me a goal. I want to play this venue. I want to headline this venue. I want to get a song on a TV show. Give me a real goal. And then once you figure out what your goal is, you pinpoint that one specific thing and maybe create 10. Then you can take that goal and be like, okay, how can I achieve this? It's like, all right, you reverse engineer that goal. It's like, all right, well, I know that I want to get a song on a TV show or something like that. And it's like, I think I can take it this far, maybe enlist a couple of extra people who are friends to kind of help me do this, or maybe I need a sync agent. And so it's like, all right, so let me go find a sync agent. I learned what that is. And so which sync agent? Okay, here's a list of 10.
What's a sync agent, Ari?
Sync agent, great question. A sync, so like sync licensing is So sync is like synchronization. That means like when you sync the music to the picture. So like what most people don't realize necessarily these days is when you hear music on a TV show or in a movie, that's placed by somebody called a music supervisor, and that's called sync. So SYNC, that's like you sync the music to the picture, and the music supervisor takes the music and you sync it to the picture. And so there's actually people out there now that are called sync agents. So they're like,
oh. I don't know that again.
They specialize in taking someone's music, taking an artist's music, typically an independent artist, and they specialize in getting it synced to the TV show or the movie. So they work with these music supervisors. And so like this is something that like
that's crazy.
New music business. Yeah, this was like not really a job 10, 15 years ago. It's like a new thing. Whereas like that's why we're hearing so many independent artists when you watch a TV show or a movie or something, and there's like a lot of indie music on there. Like, wow, there's such great music on these shows. And it comes from music supervisors who find the music, but also the sync agents who are like, let me get this music and sync it to the show. So yeah, it's a cool thing that's this new age in this new era.
Had no idea there was a whole special like job just for that person who's trying to like find the background music for your favorite TV show.
Right. And that's what's so exciting to me about the new music business is that traditionally there was like just one way to make a music career happen. That was like you had to get signed to a label, you went on tour, you had to get songs on the radio, that kind of thing. These days, there's like 100 different ways to make a music career happen. And so like getting music on a TV show and doing that realm, that's like one way. And like I know I have friends who are so successful at that they get so many of their songs placed on TV shows, commercials, video games, movies, that is how they make a living. And it's like cool and amazing and fantastic. But then there's like 100 other ways that other people are making a living in like really innovative, different things that no one really knows about these days. But because the new music business is what it is right now, it's possible. And that's what's so exciting to me these days.
There's so many different avenues to do it.
Yeah.
And if you're paying your bills as an artist of any kind, I feel like you're winning. You've won.
You're making it. That's it.
Yeah, you're making
it. Yes. That's what I read. So like chapter 1 in the book is what does it mean to make it? Like, and so it's like it's helping people realign expectations and redefine what making it means, because for so long, I think the traditional mindset, especially from like our parents' generation, grandparents' generation, is that like the only way that you can make it in music is like becoming a superstar. And like, that's not accurate. I mean, like exactly what you said, if you're paying your bills, doing what you love, like to me, that's succeeding. And that's making it. And I think with anyone, it's just funny to me that like so many people think that the only way that music seems to be the only industry that making it is requires superstardom. There's no other industry that like, if you're not a superstar, like if your Uncle Joe hasn't heard of you as an artist, like then you like haven't made it. But it's like Uncle Joe hasn't heard of my plumber either, and like my plumber has a fantastic living.
He's making like 80,000 a year, just changing the pipes. So like
he's doing just fine. But like because my Uncle Joe hasn't heard of him, is he like he hasn't made it? Of course not. That's absurd. But like for some reason, that's like what it had become in music. It's like, well, I haven't heard of you, so you must not have made it. It's like, well, no, I mean, like, if you're making a living, I think no matter what profession you're in, if you're doing what you love, you know, able to get by, pay your bills, you're set. And that's totally cool.
That's one thing I love about New Orleans too. Here, when you say I'm a musician or I'm an actor or I'm a painter, no one asks you what your backup job is. What's your day job?
Yes.
No one asks you that. And I'm originally from Florida. So I wanted to be an actress. I wanted to be a writer. I've worked a little bit of all of these things into my life now, but there's always was that, yeah, but what are you going to go to school for? Yeah, but what are you going to really do while you try and screw around with that? And here there isn't that. You say that my son, he's 14. He says that he wants to, he wants to design video games. No, I don't ask him. I don't double check that. No one asks him anything else, he could say he wants to play trumpet. No one would question that in any way. That's what he's going to do. And that is so freeing. That's so nice.
I'm so happy to hear that it's like that in New Orleans, because it's not like that in most places. It is like that in LA. And that's one of the reasons that I moved to LA, because I'm from the Midwest, and in Wisconsin and in Minnesota, where I lived both places for a while. Absolutely. If you say like, oh, I'm a musician, like, yeah, all right, but what's your backup? And like, what are you really trying to do? All that. And like, yeah, you don't get that in LA at all. I mean, people are artists here and they do that. And I love to hear that in New Orleans, people support the arts. And if you want to be an artist, then people accept it. It's like, great, you're an artist. Cool. Like, let's go.
Like, even if you are waiting tables, nobody even wants to hear that story. We all know we have to do some stuff to pay the bills sometimes. That's 100%. Not the story. That's not who you are, what you do.
Right.
We ignore that part because we all know that's the part that sucks.
Right. Totally. Yes.
So that's, there's been less music in the street. We were talking about hearing it from houses, but there's less. I mean, we have all the second lines here, and sometimes you just hear there's just people in the quarter and just people playing music, and there's so much less of that right now. And I that's one thing I really hope. I believe will come back. Like, I believe it will, but it will. It's one of those things you have to wait. You have to wait until everything is totally safe, and then is everyone back out? Yeah. I don't know. Does it happen?
I mean, I think of any city, I think New Orleans has shown its resilience over the years. I mean, if Katrina couldn't end what the magic of New Orleans, then I don't think anything can end the magic of New Orleans. I think it's just, it's there and it will never leave. And I think that's one of the most magical aspects of the city is like the culture is so rich and so deep. And it's like the magic isn't, it's in the air, it's in the people, it's in the history, it's in the foundation, it's in the soil, it's just like, it's there. And it's like, it's so deep and rich that I don't think New Orleans is going to have a tough time coming back from this. I think other cities will, even LA, like LA is a city of transplants. So like, there isn't like a culture necessarily of LA, at least in entertainment. We're all kind of transplants from elsewhere. And so I've been seeing kind of, venues have been closing down, and that's like devastating, like closing the doors forever, not just like through the pandemic. So we'll see. But I have confidence New Orleans is going to be all right through this.
Yeah, there's a few places that have closed seemingly permanently. But even within those, there have been a few who have changed hands. So they closed and someone else bought them. They haven't reopened yet, but these new owners intend to. So again, it's going to be different. There's going to be a lot of change, but they're not going away. You know. So
and it's going to look different. I mean, no doubt about things will look different. But and what I'm envisioning is like kind of how, at least in the live music space, not every show will be necessarily confined to a music venue like before. I think we're going to see a lot more underground shows, a lot more unlicensed backyard, basement. Well, you guys don't have basements, but like, that kind of concerts, backyard shows, or like, house concerts, unofficial shows, just more of that. And I think cities are going to be much more lenient on allowing some of that initially, just to kind of like help the arts get through this and help everyone get back on their feet. But I think the live music landscape will look different. In the touring sense, what everybody is like concerned about is that they're going to have to basically pack 2 years of touring into like 2.5 months. And so that's challenging with the traditional music venues, with people who want to play them or go on tour or whatever. It's like, we're looking at 2 years of concerts that have all been canceled, tours that have all been canceled. And then everyone's going to try to come back like October and be like, hey, we're back. And it's like, well, we can't pack 2 years worth of concerts in 2 months. So that's what's going to be challenging.
That's
Linda.
my mom.
Oh,
so this
hi,
is my mom.
Linda. Yes. Oh, the one who was in a band in the 60s and 70s.
Yeah, I told her, I was like, you got to tune in tonight because this is a music thing. You can ask music questions.
Okay, so she asked, hi, Linda, what is something you think has changed the most for small, medium-sized bands? That's a great question. The biggest thing that has shifted is that there's a lot more expected of musicians these days outside of just making music. So, and much to artist chagrin, like most artists are not in love with having to manage their social media branding. It's not something that like we're not living to post on TikTok. Like this is not something that like most musicians are like, oh man, I can't wait to like, get post my latest reel on Instagram. And I think it's going to really, turn some people's hearts and blah, blah. It's like, that's a kind of a necessary evil. And honestly, it's a blessing and a curse because on one hand, artists can develop their own music career and take it so much further than they ever could before without the help of the system. And so previously, if you wanted to reach those peaks and you wanted to actually have a real sustainable career, yeah, you needed some support of the system. You needed the labels, you needed the agents, all that stuff. These days, we're seeing all the time. I mean, I'm seeing this every day now that there are musicians that are getting thousands of fans, millions and millions of streams, making hundreds of thousands of dollars a year, totally independent, which was like not really a thing that happened that frequently previously. I mean, Spotify just came out a few months back and said that there's over 43,000 musicians who are making a living just from Spotify revenue, just from streaming revenue. And that's more than the number of musicians who are making a living in the CD era or the vinyl records era. So it's like, it's a very different landscape. And most of those artists are independent these days. They don't have record labels. So it's like, it's a give and take. It's like, okay, cool. I can create my own career. Awesome. But now I have to create my own career. And that's the other thing. It's like, all right, that's awesome that I'm able to do this. But like, there's so much more work now for artists that's just out. It's enough for artists to just like have to create the art and then tour it, and like release the music. Now we have to be our own brand managers and our own publicists and our own booking agents and our own record labels. And like, that's why I wrote the book, because I lay it all out there and I'm like, all right, this is the reality. And the thing is, it's like, there are, of course, artists that get signed to record labels these days, and record labels still exist, indie labels, major labels, all that. But no major record label is signing and developing talent anymore. Like, I just watched the Motown documentary last night, and they're talking about Berry Gordy, how they would have auditions and you'd go in, you'd sing and be like, yeah, all right, cool, I can do. Like Michael Jackson 5 are coming in, they're like, all right, you guys got something, we'll develop you, and like Marvin Gaye's in there, it's like, yeah, you're a good looking guy, all right, well, we can develop this talent. And they work it out and they go through. Development doesn't happen anymore at the labels. It's like, you have to develop yourself these days. You have to basically build your career to a point where the labels come in, they see a full package. They're like, I got it. I know who you are. I know what you sound like. I know what, like, the whole brand is there, everything. Now we're just going to basically take it from here to here. Whereas like before, they would just take someone who was talented, like see you in a club, like, wow, these guys are talented. Like, they need some help with like the aesthetic or the branding. They don't have a bio. They don't have a this and that. Like, we can handle all that. We'll work with them to get all this together. And then we'll launch it from here, and hopefully it'll go to there. But now it's like, kind of artists are expected to do all this stuff on their own, and then to create their careers. So yeah, it's a give and take. But yeah, that's the big difference these days.
That's that's kind of difficult for, a lot of people I can see, because you're not always have those same skills just because you're really good at piano or something, or you're really good, you know, at writing good lyrics doesn't necessarily mean you're great at putting this face out there in the world. You know, that's a lot of times what artists of all kinds need the help with.
100%. And that's, you know, that's why I wrote the book. I've been fortunate where I took to the business side of music early on, but also being a musician myself, I have that artist empathy, and I get it. I don't just conceptually understand it. Like, I feel it deeply, and it pains me. And like, it's not like, oh, you just have to check these boxes off. But like, yeah, anyone who says that doesn't live it, like, does not know the emotional toll it takes to just check one of those boxes off. Like, it's like even releasing a song, you know, like I released a song today, and like, I'm having a hard time checking my own list off because I'm just like, oh, but this song is just like, it's so, you know, so personal to me. It's so like and it's like, I get that. And like, yeah, it's a lot to expect for musicians to do that, and that's the world we live in. And you know, most fans don't really realize that. They don't realize that, like, you know, when they latch on to an Instagram post or a TikTok video or a YouTube video or something like that, like all that went into creating that. It's like, it's this whole other skill set that some people have. Most musicians don't specialize in that. Most musicians are not great at that, and that has to be learned. So it's like, you know, if you're not great at that, then it would be helpful to find somebody who is good at that, who loves what you're doing, and then you guys work together as a team. And it's, you know, nobody can be expected to do everything on their own. That's why there are managers. But you don't need to be a manager employed at a big management company to be someone's manager. If you just love music or you really believe in this artist, then read a couple books and get out there and just talk up your artist to everybody you know and figure it out. That's how like every manager started.
Yep.
And that's like what artists really need too.
Yeah, that's a whole other piece to this too. We're talking mostly specifically about the musicians themselves, but the support crew, the way you become the support crew is a lot of the same way now. Now, I don't think it always used to be that way. And now, you know, if you've gone to school or if you know people who know people, yeah, that's all going to help you. But a lot of times you have the passion for this project. And are you willing to go shake the hands? Are you willing to go meet the guy who owns the club, who books at this club? Okay. Right. And then talk about your friend who's the musician, and then see what, you know, start with a crappy time slot. That's cool. But like, you got your foot in the door, and a lot of that is just building. And so that's for the managers and for sound people and for, you know, a lot of times I know a lot of people who work in different clubs. And how did you get this job? Well, I just hung out here a lot. And then, you know, and then I met this guy and I met that lady, and they said, run the board for a minute. I go, oh shit, okay. And I didn't burn the place down. And then next weekend when he needed a break, you know, you got the gig.
I mean, friends like helping friends. And so that's the biggest thing about this industry, but any industry, but especially music. It's that if you become friends with people, then they're going to want to help you out. And it's just like, obviously, you know, in a natural way, but yeah, start by hanging out at the places and you'll get to know people and really like being, it sounds cliche, but developing authentic relationships, not just kind of going and asking for like, what can you do for me? But just, you know, take over the board. That's what I can do for you. I can help you out. If you need help, like I'm here to help. And then they'll eventually it's like, oh, you know what? Let me think of that person or something. So yeah, I think definitely, you know, showing up and being helpful and being there. That's people always appreciate that.
Oh. And then as a musician, asking for help, knowing when to ask for help. And that's advice for everybody. That takes everybody a while to learn. I think you think you can do it all on your own. Or sometimes when it comes to art too, I think you feel like it's mine. It's my art. This is my project and my art. And so at least so years ago, you know, when I was doing things, and I was like, I don't want you to touch it because it's mine. But like realizing that just because you touched it doesn't mean you stole it or you took it away from me in some way, or it becomes less my piece of the project because now I have people helping me out. And then when we all move forward together, we all move forward. I can sit back there alone, or the three of us can move forward together. Okay.
Yeah.
Let's do that.
Yeah. No, I get that. And I feel that very, very deeply. I think, you know, it's yes, knowing when to ask for help and how to, and where support can be. But then also knowing that when people come into the project, it's not necessarily that they are, trying to take over, but also just everybody having clear definitions of like where, like what their roles are. And so it's like everybody wants to feel validated in every part of the job, but also having those kind of clear guidelines of where everyone is best suited and what everybody needs. And it's not just like, yes, the artist needs certain things, and artists are typically very emotional. I can speak from firsthand experience, you know, and very sensitive. And yes, because art is directly like tied to who we are. It's part of our soul. And so it's like anybody coming in with any kind of criticism or critique is like, that's like a direct attack on my being. So that's challenging. And it's a little bit different than like a boss saying to their employee, like, hey, can we tighten up these reports? It's like, oh yeah, okay. You know, that's like a very different thing. But I think anyone who wants to work with artists need to kind of understand a little bit that they don't function the same way with their art that a normal employee or a normal person may function with a job. It's like, it's much more than just a job. It's a lifestyle. It's who we are. It's part of us.
Yeah, and I feel like because of the way the industry works now, like you were discussing, there's less of a buffer too between the artist and the public necessarily. So as my mom is saying that they used to work really close, like keep track of their interests, and I know that she's told me stories about that. Like they were very on top of what was going in and out of bank accounts and where they were going and who was doing what and all of that. But at the same time, all the travel arrangements and PR and everything was handled for them. So they were just mostly staying like checks and balances of it. And she wouldn't like the business as much today. That's probably true.
I mean, eventually the goal is to get to that point where everybody's handling that stuff for you and you don't have to deal with it. I mean, you know, that's I think that's everyone's goal, but very few artists start off that way. Whereas before, maybe if you got plucked out by a powerful someone or another and was like, hey, I'm going to turn you into a star. And like you pluck them out and like throw them into the system. It's like, sweet, everyone does everything for me. It's like, yeah, that sounds amazing. But like, unfortunately, that doesn't really happen that way anymore. It's kind of, you have to, you know, truck it out and put in the blood, sweat, tears, and really just grind it out in that 15 passenger van, you know, city to city, and sleeping on couches for years before you kind of get to that point where eventually you can hire the staff that will handle everything for you. And yeah, eventually that's the goal. You get to a point where other people are handling all the logistical stuff, all the business. But there is a point. I mean, there is an expectation still, no matter how famous you get or how rich or how successful you are, that you're still handling your social media, that you're still interacting with your fans in a way that's still part of the job. And that's like not the art. And it kind of sucks for most people. Like no one really likes, I mean, some people like it. And it's like, but when you look at it, it's like, oh man, I have to like do this stuff that's not my art. That's like challenging. But at the same time, it's like, I think you can look at it as like, well, this can also be an opportunity because like, well, I get to actually connect with supporters and fans in a way that like was never possible before. So like, I think like shifting the mindset is also really important for musicians when like, ugh, I don't want to do the, you know, internet stuff, the social media stuff, blah, blah, blah. It's like, okay, I feel that because like when you look at it as like a job, it's like, yeah, that's not as fun as writing music or performing or anything like that. Like I get that. But then if it's like thinking like, wait a minute, everyone, the people who's on the other end of this screen is a human being, and they're here and they're showing up for me, and they are supporting me, and they really love what I'm doing. And I could look at that number that I may think is a low number. I may think it's like, oh my gosh, there's only 37 people that watch this video or listen to the song. I'm just like, those are 37 human beings. Like, think about performing in front of 37 people in a club. Look at all those people's faces. Now you're thinking, it's like, wow, like, I'm not as concerned, hopefully, about these low numbers. And it's like, you know, because I think we've gotten so obsessed as an industry with these numbers. Like, what's the numbers? What's the metrics? These vanity metrics, these numbers, like, especially with streams, like, oh my gosh, if I don't get 1 million streams, I'm a failure. It's like, there's 1 million people. That's crazy. Like, there's people that will never like perform in front of 1 million people their whole life. And it's like, you think that the million marker stream marker seems to be like the benchmark of like what is success these days, which is crazy to me. It's like, you know, if you get 1,000 streams, which in our world right now is like a low. Think about what 1,000 people look like, and that's what I like try to encourage every musician is like, whenever they're looking at their numbers and they're like, man, I only got 15,000 streams on this, and all my contemporaries are getting 150,000. I'm like, 15,000 streams? That's an arena. That's Madison Square Garden. Like,
Right.
you know, if you think about that, put all those people into a venue, it's like, okay, putting things in perspective. So I think it's like, there's an opportunity here to really be able to connect in a very different way than we could ever connect with our fans. Traditionally, you could only really connect with your fans at a venue.
Yeah.
But like, if they want to show up for you, I think that like we can show up for them as well, and build a relationship together that will kind of help sustain each other throughout the course of our lives.
That's what I love about doing social media. Doing it for the bookstore, and I've run social media for a couple of bands and a couple of authors and stuff over the years, and that's the fun part, is be like, this is an opportunity to really like talk to these people. They're not just a heart or a like anymore. You can engage.
Yes, and that's and you know, when they engage, it's always very helpful too to know that they're like, that's why I, you know, any live anything, if there's a chat box, I'm very appreciative, because like, oh, you know, and so thank you for people who are asking today. Thank you, Linda. And if anyone is there and wants to ask anything, that's the beautiful part of this, is that we can have this connection and relationship.
Exactly. Well, we reached our hour.
All right. Wow. We made it. Cool.
I want to thank everybody who watched, everybody who commented. We really appreciate it. And Ari, thank you so much for joining me for Virtual Happy Hour. It was fun. I loved meeting you back in the day. I can't wait till you get to come visit New Orleans again and tour that funk show through here, because I will be front row. And thank you so much for joining us.
Thank you, Raina.
Bye.
Bye-bye.